Seattle, Washington. I have absolutely no doubt, denies that they are responsible and contributed to the atrocity in Gaza full knowingly. I have no doubt that George Galloway and Owen Jones and their Sam Baghra gang hold likewise to be faultless in ignoring my warnings at Carnegie Mellon in the 80s and 90s that this was coming and even already going on, that Israel was embarked on revenge attacks against ordinary, innocent people. Seattle, Washington says no. Let's enjoy this moment of horrendous outrage wrapped in the paper of mirth, for it touches a sad and rueful comedy. Seattle says no. So we may as well just strike from the record the letter after letter after letter that I wrote describing an insane Holocaust simulation experiment in Highland Park in 1974. I told them I was gassed, kidnapped and gassed. The letters were from Israel. So we have clear evidence that the University of Pittsburgh slandered me to cover for an insane Holocaust simulation experiment that went on when I was 12 or 13 years old. And Seattle says no. Seattle says, come to us for protection from abuse, and then castrates me and gives me Parkinson's in defense of Pitt's slanders. They say no, and what's more, you cannot go to school. They wouldn't let me go to school for 12 years. They said I would fail. When I managed to get into college for 4 years, I was a straight A student, even with complete deafness and only the sign language skills I learned from a girl who had Down syndrome. Seattle said no. But there's more to it than Seattle saying no and ignoring the first Holocaust simulation experiment. Why does Seattle say, no, we're not to blame for what's going on in Gaza? No. Why did the sandbaggers, George Galloway and Russia, say, no, we're not to blame for what's going on in Gaza? No. It's not merely because they ignored a Holocaust simulation experiment and dire warning and worked the Beatles' witchcraft magic eraser at the paper shredder about the whole thing. That's not the only reason why Seattle says no. Seattle also says no because there was a second criminally insane, morally deranged, unspeakable, violent, cruel, deranged Holocaust simulation experiment. And it's pure coincidence that a Holocaust survivor's neighborhood was used to kidnap a nice blonde boy as a child for the first Holocaust experiment. So we know for a fact, beyond a shadow of a doubt, and have no need to investigate, that a second Holocaust simulation experiment took place on Mount Desert Island in the 80s, in which it was proven that the victim of the first Holocaust simulation experiment was used as a setup for the second Holocaust simulation experiment, which it was proven that the second Holocaust survivor simulation experiment predated the Holocaust that it was about by 20 years. The letters about the AIDS attack, which is now known to have been about the AIDS attack, in which the Beatles cooperated, for example, in which Seattle says no, was all set up in advance. And they bear no responsibility that it was never investigated. When a third Holocaust, a third genocide, 1, 2, 3, well, golly gee, big boy, you're 3, took place in Gaza. No, Seattle says no. Seattle says no, 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 no. When Seattle says no, no means no.